the Jake Giffin Podcast.
All right, Craig Dehut. Welcome to the Jake Giffin Podcast. Craig Dehut is a Christian documentary filmmaker, storyteller, co-founder, and CEO of Appian Media. Did you name that company after the Greek historian, by the way? Hey, sorry to interrupt. Craig Dehut's going to teach us a masterclass on what it is to edit, to track down, to plan out the whole thing of creating documentaries and making films. And if you're into it, it's going to be so much fun. But I need you to hit that subscribe. We're trying to appease the YouTube overlords. And if we can do so, they'll see favor in us and push this thing out so Craig and his work at Appian Media can be more well known. So hit that subscribe. Leave a comment saying Appian in the comments and enjoy the show.
Not the Greek historian, but after the first century Roman roadway, so the Appian Way that connected all of these different countries as Rome was expanding across the known world. So
Okay.
yeah, very intentional with the naming of the organization.
What's the idea with that? Is it, just inroads for the gospel and the things that you're doing in filmmaking now?
Yeah, very much so. So it's one of the reasons why historians tell us that Christianity actually spread as quickly as it did, because for the first time, many of these countries were connected now because of this roadway. Rome was obviously using them for totally different reasons, but Christians used what was made to spread the gospel. And so we're doing the same. We're using the roadways of the internet and media built for different reasons, but Christians are hopping on those roadways and we're getting the gospel around the world.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I mean, you were doing corporate stuff at 12 Stars and then tech projects at Hitcents.
At Hitcents, yeah. That was in Bowling Green. Boy, that's probably been about 15 plus years ago now. Yeah.
Now you're running around Israel doing documentaries and
Right.
How did that pivot happen? And what stuck with you from the corporate grind?
That's a great question. I actually ask myself regularly, how did I get here? What? So I went to film school. I had hopes and dreams of becoming the next Steven Spielberg. I wanted to write and direct feature films. And that's all I was really focused on. So working with actors and writing scripts and making short and long form narrative film. I certainly didn't have documentary in mind. But yeah, I did work at Hitcents. It was probably the most corporate environment I've ever been. You're there. We weren't necessarily in cubicles, but we were in offices sitting at desks. But I was still able to do creative things. I was animating and illustrating and designing mobile games, which was not at all anything I went to school for, but had a talent for. And I mean, if someone says, hey, do you want to make video games for a living? Like, say yes, try it for a little while. And I was able to do some video for them as well, but eventually moved my family up to the Indianapolis area to take this job at 12 Stars Media and worked with them for about 3 years. And that really kind of sparked more of an interest of just interviewing real people, telling real stories. Even for businesses, for clients, you're essentially shooting micro documentaries. You're shooting 2 to 5 minute pieces where you're interviewing people and having them tell a real story. And it was during that time, actually, that I met and connected with our co-founder, Stuart Peck, who was living and working in the same area. And he and I both kind of had a love for the Bible and a love for this medium. Different skill sets, but together we kind of went, how hard could it possibly be, right? To travel over to Israel and make these documentaries.
Famous last
Our
words.
Ignorance was the fuel that provided those first few years.
I cannot tell you how many times I've said, how hard could it be? Let's just do it.
Let's just do it. Yeah, because you're gonna paralyze yourself if you actually take the time. I mean, count the cost. That's a biblical concept. That's something that Jesus encourages.
Yep.
But you can take it too far where you spend so much time thinking what could go wrong, how hard could this be, that you end up paralyzing yourself and not doing anything.
Yeah.
So we jumped in. The spring of 2016, we launched a Kickstarter campaign and raised the funds to take a trip to Israel that summer and have been doing trips like that ever since.
Oh, I have a home services business that started around the same time. So right there.
You go.
If we knew then what we knew now, no, I'm just kidding.
I probably would have scared myself out of doing the thing. And so I am thankful that we kind of went, look, we know enough. Neither of us were so proud to say that we knew it all.
Yeah.
I had never traveled overseas. The farthest out of this country I had ever been was Montreal,
Wow.
and that for like 2 days. But we were like, we can do this. Let's make this thing. We just weren't seeing the kind of quality biblical and free content that we were wanting, and so
Yeah.
we went.
So
We're just
stuff
going to
that,
have to
man,
do it
you
ourselves.
so you never been really out of the country other than to Montreal. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden you're just making video games and doing short storytelling for companies is kind of a bust. I'd like to have, is there some kind of mission in mind that you're just like, oh, I think I'll travel around the world now? I mean, how that's just,
Yeah.
yeah.
There was a mission that threaded through all of these various jobs. Even in high school, before I went to film school, I wanted to use media to communicate biblical truths. I
Mhm.
didn't quite know exactly how I would do that. Originally, the idea was that I would make feature films. I would write and direct, and I still may do that. There's still a creative itch here
Oh,
that
you're still young enough. You could do
I
anything you
still
want.
would like to. But all along, it was how can I do something creative
Mhm.
and something in the kingdom? And so when this opportunity was presented, the idea was kind of brainstormed out of a coffee shop between Stu and I, where it's like we have the drive, we see the need, we have the skill sets to do something like this, and it kind of it combined these two loves that I had,
Yeah.
film and media and creativity, and my love for scripture and the Christian faith. And we just weren't seeing a lot of people do it in the way that we wanted to see it done.
Yeah.
And so that prompted us to go for it.
Well, Christian entertainment generally isn't great.
It's true.
It is
It's
well,
true.
and I think it's getting better, right?
Yes,
Like I'm a musician. I like musical things. I'm more like metalhead kind of guy, and there hasn't been a lot of good metal. I mean, there is some. You got to weed through a lot of stuff
sure.
to get to the fun stuff and the good, well written, not corny stuff. And that's so. I imagine in filmmaking, it is very much the same thing. As Christians, we're looking for that entertaining value that speaks to me on a level that I understand. And let's face it, in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, there just wasn't a lot of production companies
Yeah.
putting out any quality stuff.
Yeah, and there were a variety of reasons for that, but I would say most of it had to do with our lack of funding
Mm,
and our lack of talent. Because you had, at that time, most quality films were being made in Hollywood. That's where the funding was, that's where the talent was. And
yeah,
so Christians, if they wanted something made of quality, they would have to go to Hollywood and basically ask for permission. And
yeah,
surprise,
good luck.
Hollywood was not interested in making that kind of stuff. And so those who still had a drive for it had to get real scrappy with very low budgets, with not A-list or B-list or even C-list actors, but they used what they could and did what they could with what they had.
Yeah,
I'm really excited over the last 20 years, really, that funding no longer has to solely come from Hollywood.
right.
There are so many production companies, Christian production companies, that are just crowdsourcing. They're going straight to the audience
Mm,
and saying, "Do you want this content?" And the audience is either prepaying for it. We see Angel Studios and others where they're prepaying for movie tickets before the movie's even released yet,
yeah,
or crowdfunding campaigns. And that's essentially an approach that we took, where we take Hollywood out of the equation. So the funding got solved in creative ways in the last 20 years. And I'm glad to say that many Christians went and pursued the education and got the experience so that we do have quality talent now, not just in the actors and actresses, but in the people behind the cameras. And so the advent of affordable video production equipment, we
oh,
don't have
sure,
to only go for the 5-figure, 6-figure cameras in order to get quality images now. We can actually get really good images at a fraction of the cost that it was 20, 30 years ago.
right.
And that's allowed Christians to just go experiment. On a very low budget, they'll go shoot a short film or a long film. I think of the Irwin brothers. These are the guys who own Kingdom Story Company.
Okay. Yep.
They did films like I Can Only Imagine, or the series that came out on Amazon recently, The House of David. These
Yep.
guys
Really good.
started by doing music videos for Christian artists
Okay.
and did
That's
them
interesting.
well.
Sure.
They
Yeah.
got very creative and made these really cinematic music videos.
Mm.
But at some point they went, I bet we can make a feature. And someone gave them the opportunity. Their skill set had proved that. And now, I mean, they are sitting at the table of Hollywood professionals with a seat at that table, putting out great looking content.
That's
And so
great.
it's been
Yeah.
really encouraging for us. Like the funding is no longer an obstacle. You still need to raise quite a bit of money. The stuff that we do at Appian Media
Sure.
is not cheap.
Yeah.
International documentary video production is not cheap, but we are able to do it at a fraction of the cost that Hollywood typically would.
Hmm.
And we are able to tap into some quality talent from pre-production through post that was not trained or available 20 years ago.
Right. And you're seeing it's like any other business, I would imagine, in this sense that the higher quality work you can put out, the more eyes you can put on it, the more talent you can attract, the more money you can attract, the more, and then it begins this like cycle of upward trajectory of being able to do amazing things, kind of bottlenecks at funding because
Yeah,
then gives way to quality on some level. And then if funding's not an issue for you, then it's just really your key performance indicator is how creative can you make it, entertaining, whatever you're doing, right, to get eyes on it. And then Christians, I mean, because there's Christians in Hollywood for a long time. I
sure.
think they just didn't want to pop their heads up for one, because they don't want to be they don't want to be identified. Don't identify me. I don't want to be canceled. They all want to work. They won't. But then
Yep.
when it came to those types of shows, they're like, I don't want to be associated with those things. Like
Yeah.
that'll kill my career. And so it's like, so I imagine that's kind of that wheel of quality that goes up. People then want to be associated with it. Your talent, everything gets better. So it's like
Yeah.
you're doing crowdfunding now. What are some of the places that people anywhere can find the projects you're currently working on and be
Yeah.
associated with them?
So ours is a very unique distribution model, even among the Christian media community, but certainly among, Hollywood, is we create the content and then we give it away for free.
Yeah.
So we distribute it for free online, starting with our own website and our YouTube channel. But then we make it available to a variety of other distributors. So if streaming services want to carry it, in fact, one of our most recent documentaries is via another streamer. They're available on Amazon Prime right now. But PureFlix and Right Now Media and Faith Life TV, but we give it away for free. And so people often, how do you guys get money for that?
I mean,
And
that
ours is a
question was
unique
going to come
model.
up.
So we're a nonprofit organization, and we
Yeah.
have been from the beginning. And we started with a Kickstarter campaign, which is just a crowdfunding platform that I was familiar with. I had helped my past employer, but also some other experience. I had worked on successful campaigns, and I've worked on not successful campaigns,
Sure.
and learned enough to go, I think this is the right approach. We asked for $40,000 to travel over to Israel. Now, if anyone understands even a little bit of video production, you'll understand that's nowhere near what it costs to create something like this.
Yeah.
But within a month, we had raised about $65,000. And it was enough for us to take a very small team over to Israel. Most of us were making little to nothing.
Of
It
course.
was very
Yeah.
much a passion project.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the editing was given to me that it took 6 or 7 months to edit those first few episodes together. Half of that was not paid, but we
Yeah.
wanted to get it done. And we wanted to set a precedent of this is the kind of quality that you can expect.
Hmm.
And imagine with this little budget, as the years went on and we continued to pursue, we left Kickstarter and just had people donate to us directly from our website and social channels.
Nice.
But our budgets would get bigger, and it would
Nice.
allow for better equipment and more talent, and it would allow for longer stays, and it would allow for projects that just required additional expense instead
Yeah.
of just going to Israel for 12 days. We could take a trip to Egypt and Jordan and
Right.
make a feature-length doc about the Exodus.
Yeah.
And so most of our projects now are somewhere around $250,000, and that's a single production trip. We put out 2 distinct video projects from that, and that pays for the writing and the editing, that pays for the people, the talent overseas, and a crew of about 8 to 10 people.
Wow.
And we capture as much as we can while we're over there. And it's still the average Netflix documentary will spend 4 to 5 times that amount to make half of that content.
For
And
sure.
so
Yes. I
uh,
mean, you're doing like one series for a 250,000, or is it
we're doing 2. So technically, we'll,
two
we'll come away
series?
with, yeah, we'll come away with what we call our main series.
Yeah.
This will typically be either episodic or feature length, but about 2 hours worth of content. And then we put out a shorter children's series. These are going to be like
Yep.
13 short videos for grade school kids using that content in a variety of different ways. And so it's putting out, about 3 to 3.5 hours worth of quality video content. And again, we're doing it at a fraction of the cost that
Great.
Hollywood typically would. So
That
yeah,
is Appian set up as a 501(c)(3), or is it
correct.
okay? So
Yeah.
look, for anybody who, tax deductible
Shameless
donate,
plug here.
it's
Yeah. We're nearing
like
the end of the
shameless
year
plug.
and tax time. And, we are supported by individuals who believe in the mission. They want to see more of this content available for themselves and for their kids and for their grandkids. The content we put out isn't just for children. It's for everyone.
Mhm.
And so, we're supported by people who can look back at their own upbringing and their own faith and go, I wish this resource had been available then.
Yeah.
What can I do now to invest in the next generation so
Mhm.
that we can be equipped with these kind of tools?
And this is telling the most important story known to man. Like
Absolutely.
they could discover life on another planet tomorrow, and it's the story that is important to that planet too. That's how important the story is. It's like when you're trying to figure out, and this isn't meant to be, some infomercial or anything, but when you're trying to figure out where your tax deductible gifts are going, and you've given to your church already, and you're just trying to figure out, hey, where else can I go? You know,
Yeah.
you can support the vision and mission of getting these stories told in an entertaining way, especially going out to kids. And this is how do you or how did you adjust from corporate storytelling? Was there much of an adjustment from telling corporation stories to telling Jesus's story?
I've always tried to, even with, for the last 10 years, I still create content for clients. I still hire myself out occasionally as a freelance video producer. Even when I'm doing those corporate videos, I try to make them as real and genuine and telling a story as much as I can. I get them out of the conference rooms and the boring white walls
Mhm.
and the, talking points. And I've tried to dig and find what's the story here? How do we keep this engaging and interesting?
Yeah.
We're not the first people to create videos about the Bible. We're not the first people to go to the Bible lands and shoot video, but we were seeing a huge lack of take me into the city, talk to the
Mhm.
locals there, eat the food and show me what that's like. And as you're telling me the story of Jesus, I want to see Bethlehem. I want you to interact with sheep and a shepherd. I want you
Right.
to, engage and feel like it's a genuine storytelling. And so it wasn't much of a shift
Mhm.
for Stu or for myself or the other members of our team. We're constantly asking ourselves, how do we keep this biblically and historically accurate?
Mhm.
That's one of the bedrocks of what we're producing. But
Sure.
how do we make it authentic and engaging? We want people to be invested and interested. And so how are we shooting it? How's the story and the pacing? And we have found mostly it's just about capturing the real. It's
Mhm.
going in there, and you can watch some of the behind the scenes that we've got on our YouTube channel. We come in with a plan, we've got a schedule, but we are always willing to shift around and go, hey, we just drove by this house. They've got a clay oven out there and they're baking bread in the morning. Let's stop and shoot that
Ooh,
scene
that
and
sounds
just
nice.
ask them about the bread and have breakfast with them. And, we did a series about Egypt and Exodus. And so we found a brick making where they're making handmade mud bricks in a
Stop
very
still.
similar fashion.
I haven't
And
seen
so
that one
still,
yet.
and so we get our host down in the mud. He rolls up his pants and he gets down in the mud and scoops it around. And We want people to feel it and experience and feel like they're coming along with us.
You have so much content online. I've been binging it the last few days, and I can tell I haven't reached the mud one. Now I gotta go see the
Yeah,
guy trotting around in the mud. He's like the Christian Mike Rowe. He's just sitting in
that's
there,
right.
dirty. He's the
Dirty
dirty
jobs, man.
jobs guy.
Yep.
They're still making bricks by hand.
They
Like,
are, yeah. So there are cities, I mean, they're towns or villages, but they are still making mud bricks by hand. And the scene that we shot there, you've got these strong guys out there because it's heavy,
yeah,
hard work, but they're producing thousands of bricks a day and
that's
building their homes with it. So
are they Jewish? Just out of just curiosity.
not in Egypt, no,
No,
no.
that would be ironic though, right? I
That
mean,
would be amazing.
that
That
is
would
a
be amazing.
full circle, right? You go.
But remember, the Jews came out, right?
The Jews
There's
came
an
out, you
exodus.
guys went right. Eventually, you made your way back to making bricks. What in the world are you guys doing? It's that would be crazy. It's
Yeah.
seeing the. I mean, what's it like, man? Because you're in a first world office.
Yep.
You have the availability of all technology, and for all intents and purposes, we have come about 2,000 years since the resurrection of Christ, and those civilizations still seem like they're just barely separated from that time. I mean, making bricks by hand
Some of
still?
them are, I mean, certainly our series on Out of Egypt and some of the locations that we went to in Egypt and especially in Jordan are fairly remote.
Mm.
But believe it or not, they're making mud bricks by hand over here, but you'll still see them pull out a smartphone later on and they're using it. Like, so they still have access to electricity and the internet. It's very common. But I think a common misnomer, especially about Israel is actually incredibly technologically, in some ways, more advanced than we are.
Yeah,
Tel
Israel
Aviv,
is. Yeah,
I mean, they have incredible minds there, and it's a
mm,
very much a modern day city.
yeah,
It's rare that we will go anywhere where we don't have power and electricity and modern conveniences.
yeah.
But we are also looking for those opportunities where we're going to drive out to some remote places. We're going to climb up. Jabal Musa is one of the potential locations for Mount Sinai in the Sinai Peninsula. Pretty remote, and we do climb up to the top of that mountain and we sleep under the stars up there. There's very little up
That's
there,
nice.
but yeah, we're looking for those opportunities. But we're over there with camera gear and equipment,
Mhm.
and so obviously we need and have access to modern conveniences.
Yeah. What's the logistics of that, man? That's got to be a huge pain. Like, I mean,
Yep. That is my main role. So for example, we're planning on taking a production trip the end of September. We're going to be traveling to Israel and Turkey and Greece over an 18-day period. And pre-production and development on this began back in March. And it will take
okay.
every bit of that before the trip. And so this is coordinating with people, we call them fixers over
Mhm.
in those countries, getting accommodations and film permits and drivers and vehicles and all of the
Wow.
safety considerations. And it takes months and months and months of
That's
planning.
like what, 6 months of planning or 7 months of planning just to go
Yeah,
for 18 days.
that's right. Yeah,
That's
because these are not the type of productions that you just want to show up and whip out a camera and go, what are we shooting here? Like, we're there for a very limited amount of time, and we want to shoot as much as we possibly can,
Mhm.
and we're wanting to capture it from multiple angles. And it's not uncommon for us to shoot content that we might not even use for another 3 or 4 years. But it's
Oh,
like
right.
while we are here, we're capturing everything that we can, we're constantly looking many years ahead, going, we could eventually use this later for this and for
Get
this.
the B-roll when you can get it.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Spray it down is what we say. Once the scene is over and we've got 30 more minutes at this location, I tell all the cinematographers, go spray it down
Yeah.
and just shoot until it's time to go.
I mean, the huge responsibility that you've undertaken in doing biblical documentaries. It's one thing to tell a story about whatever, Hitler or name a his whatever and get some details wrong, right? That's okay.
Sure.
Well, oops, sorry. We went with the best information we had. But when you're telling a story about Jesus, there's a, oh, I think James says that the teacher is going to be more strictly judged,
Correct.
right? And
It's a
so
great responsibility. Yeah.
that's a huge responsibility. So you're going over taking all the opportunities possible to unravel as much. What is the biggest, what can you think of the biggest surprise you've run into to date when you've tried to uncover a story that you thought you knew?
Hmm. That's an interesting way of asking that. I mean, not only during the pre-production are we doing all the logistics of the trip, but there's a lot of research and writing that goes into that prior to going over there. And so it's research and reading the biblical text to start. We
Mhm.
want to know that story well. We want to
Yeah.
know it backwards and forwards. And so when we're over there, we're speaking truth as it's written down. But
Mhm.
we're also trying to check facts with the history that we know, the archaeology that's available, the cultural information that we have.
Mhm.
Sometimes there's guesswork. The study of archaeology, that's kind of the nature of it, is you've got these facts, and some people come to this conclusion, and some people come to that conclusion, and which one's more reliable? How much time do you spend on that debate? And so there are times where while we're over there, we're presented with information that we didn't know or were able to gather
Mhm.
about the location or the history, and so cameras are rolling, and there are times where I'll look over and go, I didn't know that. That's amazing. And then you're working that in post-production, but you're also checking those facts
Mhm.
because it's not uncommon. You'll go to a location and they will say, for tourism reasons, this is the spot where David fill in the blank. No,
Oh, yeah.
no, it's not. It's probably not, but it looks good on a sign and it brings in tourists. We
This
want to
is
make
where
sure that we're
Goliath, this is
differentiating from
this is
that.
the exact spot where Goliath died.
Yeah,
It's
his
like,
head was right here after David cut it.
no
Come on.
way. How
But
big was it?
we do know where the Valley of Elah was.
Yeah.
It is incredibly described in detail geographically in the Bible. We can find it. It narrows down, and you know where the hills were. There's a creek on Israel's side of that battle, but we can't make things like, yeah, this is the rock, and this is where Goliath went down.
Yeah.
And there have been times where even after release, we realize we take it through focus groups and we have people look it over, but sometimes something slips through. I remember distinctly one of our hosts made the comment about Jesus being circumcised as a child at the temple at 40 days old.
Mm.
And he said it twice in the episode. And we
Right.
took it through focus groups. No one caught it. That isn't accurate. Jesus was
Right.
circumcised at 8 days old,
Yep.
and he was dedicated at 40 days old. The
Mm.
scripture says it.
Mm.
We understand that was Jewish practice, and that was according to the law of Moses.
Yep.
And so we actually had to change the video. I worked that audio around, and we wanted to make sure, to the best of our abilities, that we're being as accurate as we can.
Did
That
you catch it
is
before it was released?
no, it
No.
had already been released. But thankfully, the nature of what we do is we can pull that video down and make the change and put it back up. Now, there
Um,
are likely still DVDs running around there with
sure.
one of our hosts inaccurately saying that. But to us, it's that important. Like we're going to take the time to correct that.
You know, on some level, that's just life. That is like some part of the creative process. Nobody would have ever guessed coming into this episode that it would take 7 months just to plan the trip. And you have what'd you say? You're there for 8 weeks, 12 weeks,
Oh man, no, we're there
Yep.
for 18 days.
18 days.
And that's the
Yeah,
longest
that's
trip
right.
we've ever taken. Yeah,
18 days. So
18 days.
7 months planning, 18 days to get it done, trying to get as much. And then how long? I don't even want to know because so I don't know if this podcast is always, we've just started interviewing guests. It's always kind of just been a me podcast.
Yeah.
And, it just hasn't, I enjoy it, but it's not as much fun as talking to interesting people. So we're kind of branching out. We're doing more audio, we're doing more video, right? So now in that, I'm doing a lot of editing,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Takes time.
I kind of don't want to know the answer to this, but 18 days,
Mm-hmm.
boots on ground. You come home with all your footage. How long does it take you to edit all that and get a cohesive story?
You're talking somewhere between 8 and 12 months.
God bless. What?
All the while, if things are running smoothly, during those 8 to 12 months, we are in pre-production and planning of the next one. so that think because if we only did one thing at a time, we'd be doing this for, 50
Sure.
years in just a few projects.
Yeah.
But things are overlapping.
Right.
Things are
Yeah.
overlapping. And so the job is done now. If we had a full-time editor and was doing nothing but that,
Mhm.
we could certainly turn that out. But right now you're looking at the editor.
Yeah.
And so, I'm also running an organization and fundraising at times and working with the pre-production and planning of the next
Yeah.
project. But yeah, it takes time.
It's not
You got
easy
to
being the
craft
CEO.
craft that. No, it's not, and I never thought I would be, frankly. I was the guy who's I'm never going to own my own company. I'm certainly
Mm.
never going to manage a team. I just want to be that guy that, you know, works for the director and makes great movies. And God looked down and chuckled a bit and went, "Well, watch
Yeah.
this."
Yeah. I had the same thing before I started my home services business. I had no desire to start it. I had no desire to own that type of business. Big surprise for everybody listening, but they're not surprised. And yeah,
Here you are.
circumstances, one thing leads to another, then you're in it and you think, all right, well, this is much different than I thought it was going to be, for sure.
Yeah.
What do you do with that information? You're in it and you're putting on these different hats. You're the editor. You're putting in months of edit. So you have your storyboards. You have your idea of how you're going to, I imagine, correct me if I'm
Oh
wrong.
yeah.
You have your storyboards. You have your way that you're imagining the story laying out, where you're going to go a certain day, what you're going to film, kind of how you're going to piece it together. And it still takes 8 months to edit that
Yeah.
and get a
Yeah,
story
because
together.
this isn't like a narrative film where we've got a script and we know exactly so and
Mhm.
so is going to say this and the next person's going to say this, and now I'm just putting those pieces together.
Yeah.
I mean, no disrespect for the people who edit feature films, that still takes months and months.
Yeah.
But this is we have an idea and a plan for what is supposed to be covered at each location.
Mhm.
We know that this scene is going to go into this scene, but on any given day, like I said, we're encountering situations and even people that we weren't planning on.
Mm.
We were by the Nile River and we had planned on and booked a time on a boat so that we could sail around the Nile River. So we had a boat captain who was there prepped for that. But while we were waiting for him, we encountered a gentleman, an older guy, who was there selling coffee. And he could boil the water and sell coffee. And so we said, look, we've got 20 minutes here. Let's throw a mic on that guy. He doesn't even speak English, but we had our interpreter next there, and we shot a scene of just talking to this gentleman about what the Nile means for Egyptian culture and hearing about his story. And we weaved that in to the edit later on. And so
Yeah.
being open to those opportunities and what parts do you leave out? Because we certainly shoot far more than people are going to be willing to sit through.
Sure.
And so yeah, that's part of the process. And it's a part that I do very much enjoy.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're coming back with hours and hours and hours of spoken content that needs to be brought down to about two.
Yeah. So I mean, it's like kind of like pastors. I mean, pastors kind of, or at least old school pastors before they started using AI were doing that. They're studying. They're,
They shouldn't do that. They
they
shouldn't do
shouldn't do that still. We know you. We know some of you guys out there. We know what you're doing. But look, you use the tools at your disposal on some level, but you might study for 40 hours for a Sunday message and you just come up
Yeah.
with so much content that you can't possibly teach it all. It all sifts
Yep.
down to 45 minutes, you
Yeah.
know.
What does the audience need? What's going to meet the need of the moment? A good preacher is gonna understand his audience and the need of that church.
Yeah.
And so we're doing the same thing is okay, we're going over to Jerusalem. In this particular instance, we're going to be talking about the first half of the book of Acts. Well, how do you address that? There's
Mm,
a variety of different ways that we can go. What's our focus? What's our theme? How do you break it down into chapters? How do you stay focused? Because you could go off on all of these different tangents.
mm.
And so that's what our writers and researchers are doing right now, and trying to understand what's helpful and what's needed at this time.
Is that the main thing? Like when you're planning it out, are you thinking through that whole straight line process to what you want the outcome to be? Is that your North Star to stop from going down all these kind of side quests?
Yes. So at the very beginning, the recognition between myself and Stuart the conversations we were having in this coffee shop were he was specifically at the time bemoaning what he was seeing in classrooms, like Bible classrooms, that young people especially were getting disengaged and
Mm.
teachers were having a hard time getting them to see how awesome and exciting the biblical story was. And so Stuart was like, I'm looking for videos, I'm looking for visuals so that specifically I can get them re-engaged with the Bible in a classroom. Now,
Yeah.
we understand the Bible can be taught and should be taught in more than just a classroom. It should be taught at
Mm.
home, it should be taught at school, it should be. But our North Star is how can what we are creating be used to teach the Bible?
Mm.
And that might be a parent with their kids, that might be in a huge auditorium, a preacher presenting a message, but especially it ought to be useful in a classroom. That's really
Mm.
kind of our North Star. And so
Okay.
we don't want to create content that's really fun to watch for 10 minutes. We're, sailing on the Nile River and we're
Yeah.
drinking coffee, but the Bible is never spoken. Like that's not helpful. That's not what we're after. What
Yeah.
we're after is I want a teacher to reach out as they do and say, I used this piece when we were talking about Solomon building the temple. And this was really the kids just got engaged, or the older people, our adult class just got really excited. And so that's what we're weaving through. Now, we will take time to eat the food and talk about modern culture and talk with locals, but all the while, the idea is how can this be used to get people excited about the Bible again?
Yeah. Yeah. Ancient stories that apply. I mean, they apply today. And it's when you're walking the footsteps of Jesus and telling the most amazing story ever
Yeah,
on the ground that he was on.
yeah,
And you're like, okay, this is kind of like that moment I think Jim Caviezel was talking about when Mel Gibson asked him to play
mm,
Christ in his Passion of the Christ, and he goes, "This is going to kill your career. Like this is not going to be good for you."
yeah,
And it's like because you're telling a story that has a chance, like to really like this is the creator of the universe dressed like a man walking on planet Earth to show
right,
us stuff like
yeah,
and you don't want to get, I mean, you certainly don't want to get that wrong. I mean, that is that's a high calling for the people that listen to this. They're young entrepreneurs, they're young creatives. They're doing all kinds of, in starting Appian, was that, I mean, I don't want to say that's like a burning bush moment, right? That's not like something that just goes, you wake up. I knew you kind of referenced it at the beginning, but like, what was the big shift for you going from it was a hit stance?
hit sense in
Hit
Bowling
sense.
Green,
Yeah.
and then 3 years at
12
12 Stars
stars.
Media here in
Yeah.
Indy. Yeah, there never was a moment where it's like, oh, I know for sure this is my calling. I'm all in. There has never been explosive growth for Appian Media.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we're celebrating our 10-year anniversary this
Mm-hmm.
fall. So it was back in September of 2015 that this idea was created. Over those last 10 years, I've been working other jobs. I've not
Yeah.
been able to commit full time to this. Even
Right.
now, I am mostly full time, but I still have a few clients that I do
Mm.
work for. It's not been this, oh, I'm gonna, I've got a wife and kids, and the kids keep expecting to be fed every day, every day.
You want to
And
be
so I
fed
can't
every
just
day?
go, yeah, I'm chucking it all in and we'll make this work. It's never worked that way.
Yeah.
But there have been moments where, and my philosophy has tried to be that I never want to say no to an opportunity. I never want to close a door until I've at least looked through the door.
Yeah.
And so this idea was presented and it seemed absolutely crazy. It was not something I was particularly looking for, or at least I thought. And I was employed full time at the
Mm-hmm.
time.
Yeah.
So we launched that Kickstarter and we took a trip to Israel and I was employed full time. In fact, I was not intended to be the editor of that first series. We were flying home from Israel going, so who are we actually going to get to edit this thing? Because I don't have time for that. Stu didn't have time for that.
Right.
And we got back on a Friday And I got fired from my job on a Monday and
There,
suddenly went,
wow. There's your answer.
okay, well,
Who's going
at
to edit
least
this?
there's
Craig's
enough
going to do it.
money here to keep me gainfully employed for, the next 3 or 4 months. And I could try to spin my wheels and look for another employer, or I could go freelance, which I
Yep.
swore I never would do.
Oh my gosh. Tell me. Yep.
And so, but I look back on that and their struggles of that. Anyone who thinks that a freelancer, it's just so much freedom and it's super easy and your income is doing this.
Yeah.
But at the end of the year,
With
I
your
could say,
emotions, by the way.
oh,
Don't.
and your emotions and yeah, your self-worth and all that.
Yeah.
But at the end of every year, I'm able to look back and go, this was a better year than the year before.
Yeah.
I'm making far more than I ever did when I was working for an employer. There are some days where it's incredibly difficult.
Hmm.
And there were plenty of days where it's like, I need to find a client and shoot a video for somebody this week.
Hmm.
Otherwise, I'm going to go and work at a coffee shop again. But God has taken care of us.
Yeah.
And Appian Media has been the same. Yes, we are in a position now after 10 years where we can ask for $200 to $250,000 for per project.
Yeah.
But every time we do, through a variety of means, it is not easy.
Hmm.
It is a push, it is a slog sometimes. And there have been times where we wanted to take a trip and things had to be delayed, either through lack of funding or COVID and countries shutting down,
Yeah.
where it's not this perfectly obvious path that's just laid out before us for the next 20 years.
Yeah. It's not a
But we're trying
YouTube
different
clip.
things. And yeah, it's not a Mr. Beast kind of, even
Yeah.
if you look at Mr. Beast's story, yes, he's the most prolific YouTuber now, but look at his story. He wasn't making viral videos right out of the gate.
Right.
He was making videos that mostly no one watched at the
Yeah.
beginning, but he just kept at it.
Yep.
I don't know how you feel about Mr. Beast, but
I'm
and that's been
agnostic
our
about them, but
philosophy.
yeah.
We're just going to keep doing it, do it to the best of our abilities. We're going to find new ways of finding donors and generating revenue, and looking for ways to create more content because that's the calling that we've been given, with
How
the
do you
understanding that God has a plan here and He'll decide.
is that I mean, is that overall, is that the main thing? Is that you heard from God and that's what keeps you going? What keeps you going then? It's like,
I mean, I wish I could say that, yeah, like a voice spoke to me and said, form Appian Media and do this thing. I have a relationship with God
mhm,
and He speaks to us, through His word and through His Spirit. It's never been so clear. And so if there are people listening who are afraid to do anything until they get that direct, oh, I know for sure that this is what
mhm,
God wants me to do. I've never experienced that where I
yeah,
knew beyond a shadow of a doubt this was the thing. But I do know, and God has explained, that He wants every Christian out there to do their work as if they're working to Him.
mhm,
And so whether you're schlepping coffee or you're making documentaries or you're digging ditches,
mhm,
God has spoken and said, do that to the absolute best of your abilities and
yeah,
do it so that when people see it, they honor me, God says, and not just you. And so that's been our philosophy. It may be that 5 years from now, God has some other intention for us, and the
mm,
opportunities are no longer there, and we need to be okay with that.
yeah,
But my work in the kingdom, while it may take different forms, I need to be active and working in the kingdom in
yeah,
whatever way I can be
right.
every day.
Yeah, so whether you're schlepping coffee or you're digging ditches,
Yeah,
that's you do that. That is in essence your Garden of Eden. That is what God has given you to dominate at the moment.
that's right.
And you should dominate it to your best ability. Do it as he would do it himself. And to those, I mean, there's plenty of people out there listening that are going to listen to this or who listen to it immediately and later in the future. And which is my boss is a jerk. I think if he can run a coffee shop, boy, I'm sure I could do a coffee shop just fine. And then they go out and They try to start a coffee shop and they realize all the reasons why their boss is a jerk because
Reality hits them in the face. Yeah.
reality kicks them in the face and they realize why their current boss is so jaded. I had a boss that he was difficult to get along with. I mean, we got along fine. It's probably a personality thing, but he was a jerk. At his core, he was a jerk at his
Mm,
core. He didn't influence me at all to start the business that I started, but he was a jerk at his core. And then when you start your own business and you kind of go through these financial ups and downs, these emotional ups and downs, you're learning lessons of things that you didn't know before. You had
yeah.
no clue about payroll tax, those types of things that surprise you and you go, "Oh my gosh, what have I just done to myself?" It started
Right.
this it's those moments where you go, "Okay, where's my North Star? My North Star is I got to do it like God would do it.
Yeah.
He's given it to me to do
Yeah.
and I need to manage it the way that he would manage it." And
And learn what you can in each position.
mm,
My very first job, back when I was 16, this has been 25 years ago. I worked at a clothing store. It was a preppy. People would go there and buy golf and tennis clothes and whatever.
okay.
But I was a homeschool kid and not at that time particularly good with people. But this job forced me to look customers in the eye, engage with them,
Yeah.
and get comfortable doing that.
Hmm.
And I never saw myself as pursuing a career in retail, but
Right.
I can look back at that job and go, God was teaching me some things there that I've been able to use now with every employment experience after that.
Yep.
Working at HitSense, that's not what I went to film school for, but I was able to use my talents and do some things. And that I used pieces of that made the next job more helpful. And then what we're doing with Appian Media, that was based on my time working in television news for a while. It's based on my time in film school. That's based on my time at HitSense and at 12 Stars. But it's taking those things to go, had I not learned something here and something here and something here, I don't think this opportunity would have been available to me.
Yeah.
And so looking at what you're in right now, and I worked at a coffee shop for over 6 years while I was in film school. I didn't even like coffee when I started working at the coffee shop. I love it now, but there are things that I learned how to interact with people, how to work under stress,
Yep.
how to remember details and follow instructions, and how to stay chill under pressure.
Mm.
That, man, that has become very helpful.
Yeah.
That no one should look at their current employment, especially us guys. We tend to identify it directly to us as individuals. Oh,
Mhm.
I'm just a barista. I'm just a no. This is the thing that God has you doing at this time. What
Yep.
can you learn while you're there? How can you glorify him in whatever that is? And keep yourselves open for new opportunities.
Yeah, there's a certain humility that we lack when we're younger, because we're always maybe there's a part of us that's looking towards the next thing. We're, especially in the era of social media where everybody's putting their best foot forward, everybody's showing you
Right.
the best, newest car and the easiest steps to become a millionaire and all these different things that they're showing you, and you think, well, I should be able to do that. The coveting heart is one that is not ripe for learning. When
Yeah.
it's the humility that it takes to just kind of settle in where you are, learn what you can from the experiences. Sufferings like that. Romans 5 talks about the process of building character, and in that process you don't avoid suffering.
That's right. Jesus didn't. In fact, when the apostles first encountered the difficulties related to professing Christ in the early chapters of the book of Acts, they did not pray that God would remove the suffering. They did
Mhm.
not pray that God would punish the people who were causing the suffering. They simply said, God, make us bold
Yeah.
so
Yep.
that we can keep doing this. And they thanked him, they glorified him that they were able to suffer like Christ did.
Y-
And
Yeah.
so,
Well,
yeah,
and
get
well,
out there and don't necessarily look for suffering. It's okay to find ways to be comfortable,
yeah.
but don't look at it like, oh, something must be wrong here. I'm
Yeah.
encountering conflict. Well, maybe God's trying to refine you, and maybe he's blessed you with an opportunity to be like Christ.
Yeah, well, and he tells Peter to his face, he says, Satan asks to sift you like wheat.
Hmm.
Like like, hold up, man. Like, you're telling me Satan asked for me by name? Like,
Yeah.
Satan wants to sift me like wheat. Like, I'm, I would, no, I would, please, no. Like, and
Yeah.
Jesus doesn't say, I'm going to save you from the sifting. He
No.
says, I'm going to pray that you can endure it. And you're
And
like,
when you're
oh,
done,
yeah.
when you're through it, strengthen your brothers, right?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. When you're through it,
So
strengthen your
look at
brothers.
that suffering and go, okay, I've I've encountered this difficulty. God has taught me something. I could keep that to myself or refuse to learn anything, which is worse. Or I could share with people what I have learned, maybe to try and save them a little bit from the heartache and hurt if they encounter something similar.
Yeah. There is an easy way to learn it. And a lot of people choose the hard way. I don't know that. And then as I get older, I'm not sure if there's an I don't know that the easy way is worth it. I can learn from your mistakes, right? And certainly if you're going down some weird road of sin of some sort, I can learn from your mistakes. I'm not going to follow that road. I want to be holy, right? But I think in certain circumstances, suffering is the only way you can learn stuff.
It's true.
Trials and
Yeah.
tribulations are the best teachers, and can't discount that they're brought to us and given to us by God Himself to teach us things that otherwise wouldn't be learned if we were given a choice.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
there.
my wife and I, we've got three kids at home. Our oldest is 11.
Mhm.
And yes, I could do everything I can to prevent my kids from having to experience difficulties or suffering. And
Mhm.
I would do them such a disservice
Yeah.
if I were to try and do that. Now, I'm not going to intentionally inflict suffering on my kids,
That's right.
but if it's like, hey, look, we've got yard work to do outside and it's hot today, and I'm sorry for that. But today's the day we're going to do it,
Yeah.
and we're going to do it with a happy heart, and we're going to do it with every bit of our energy that we have. And it's okay if you hurt when you're done with it,
Mhm.
or someone's mistreating you right now. I'm sorry your friend treated you that way. I'm not going to say you're never going to interact with that person ever again because I don't want you to be mistreated by people. Well, then our kids would be solitary monks living on mountaintops.
Yeah. Socially
No,
awkward.
but we're going to talk through it, and we're going to, what can we learn from that difficulty, and what can you learn so that you're never that kind of person to somebody else?
Mhm.
It's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay. God has been teaching his people through suffering from the very beginning.
Mhm. And you're in the final couple minutes there. I know from a nonprofit standpoint, you're always, there's always this need for cash. You got to bring in money, man. It's like
Sure.
it is a business. At the end of the day, it's a business that returns an investment. It's an eternal investment at this point, right? But
Yeah.
how would you advise people who maybe are in that, whether they're a pastor of a church and overseeing that organization, or they're overseeing some kind of other 501(c)(3). Have you ever had a situation where a donor was just like, "Hey, man, I'll give you all the money you need, but I need you to do your documentary this way, or I need you to do this or
Mm.
do that." I mean, if you've ever had, I don't, maybe you've never had that happen, but if you have, what is what keeps you on track? I mean, what keeps you away from, I guess,
That's a great question. We have not yet encountered that. However, our team got together and wrote our core values document
Mhm.
and anticipated that very scenario. It is not outside of the realm of
Good for you.
possibility because that's what happens in Hollywood.
Yep.
You've got the writer who wrote the script, but then the production company and the producers get their hands on it, and the director gets their hands on it. And if you want to keep that funding, the writer basically has to go, okay, it's whatever you want.
Yeah.
We're not going to do that. We're not going to do that. And so we are very careful to communicate both to our donors and the members of our board. Occasionally, we have allowed businesses, because some businesses want to make, donations at the end of the year, and we encourage that. But we make it very clear that they have no say with the writing of the content. We are open for suggestions. We always encourage feedback, but whether you donated $20 to us in 2025 or you donated six figures, you get no more say over that.
Yeah.
And the people who are on board, who are interested in giving those larger amounts, they can look back at our track record over the last 10 years and appreciate what we're doing. We haven't yet encountered anyone who has said, you could be this, and wouldn't that be great? And I'll infuse cash so that you can be the next. I'm just going to leave that as a fill in the blank so I don't insult anybody.
Sure.
But you've got to, whether you're a business owner or a nonprofit organization, honestly, if you're an employee of somewhere, you've got to maybe even write it down and say, these are the lines that we will not cross. That is part of being a Christian. Is, we are to deny ourselves. We are to follow his lead and take up his cross. And that means that there are going to be times where I've got to say no to that. Financially, that would be really beneficial to us, but we're not going to give up what our core value and missions are. And so we are prepared for such a scenario, and people ought to be. You've got to be willing to say this far and no farther, because I would much rather have a smaller budget and a clear conscience than a large budget and knowing that I compromised.
Yeah. And if you and you said it right, plan ahead, because people at some point, somebody will do it. When you're going to reach a certain echelon of whatever, and people are going to try to put their thumb on the scale for themselves or do whatever they're going to do. We can say, yeah, Appian Media, you guys should donate to Appian Media. They're doing, especially if you have, first of all, we're all kind of, not all, but most of us are talentless slugs, right? We're not going to tell the story as well as Appian's going to tell it, right? So we're going to invest. We're trying to figure out ways to invest into the kingdom and get this word out. You can donate as much money to Appian Media as you want. Don't expect a producer credit or any role in the final credits. You don't deserve it, and you're not going to get it. Besides,
no, we do offer that. We're glad to,
Yeah.
say thank you to the people who promote that. But you'd be surprised. Most of the people who do, extend larger gifts usually are just like, we don't need your t-shirts.
Yeah.
We don't need credits. We do offer that. We want them to feel invested and part of the team in many ways. I'd love to meet with them, when we're able to. I'd love to interact with the people who support that. But you're right. Yeah, this isn't going to be something that you're going to be able to say, yeah, I impacted the story in this way because I've got this great idea for a production. That does happen on a regular basis. I've got this great film that I want you to tell about Moses and the aliens. And
Yeah,
it's like,
sure.
Sure. I don't remember reading about that.
Who are we? Russell Crowe? Oh, stop it.
That's right. Christian Bale and
Sorry, Russell and Christian. We're not throwing shit. But that's how it is, right? Sometimes they want to do that. And we'd rather have, we want to participate in the spreading of these stories without expecting any. I don't want to labor this, but you want your reward from Jesus and not from people.
Right.
And we're going to tell the story as creatively and as intently. You guys are doing a great job at Appian, man.
Thank you.
We're going to continue. We'll continue to pray for your success and everything you guys are doing there, because it is a worthwhile story, and it's a story that can be told a million more times in a million more different ways, and people need to hear it, and people can participate. I'll put all the information he's got in the show notes, on social media when the episode launches, and everything else. And until then,
if you
Craig,
enjoyed this show, make sure to subscribe and leave a review. For more information about Jake, log on to jakegiffin.com and find him on all social media platforms. Until next time, peace and power be yours.